Welcome back to Interview At. My name is Brandon Watson. I am an ex-Amazon, ex-Microsoft, ex-Oracle senior executive, also startup founder and a couple of exits. So I've done a lot. Here at Interview At, we focus on helping you learn how to use the Amazon leadership principles to overperform in your job interviews and land your dream job. And I do these office hour videos because one, lots of questions show up in those follow-up sessions I do after the mock interviews. And I also have received questions via email. I get those a lot, as well as I've received great pieces of advice that I would like to share out to others. One of the kind of overarching goals of what I wanted with this channel was to be able to democratize access to great leaders and great experiences, and to help others kind of move up that ladder faster by understanding how the people who are really good at what they do their jobs. And I've been extremely fortunate in my career to work for some great leaders, Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates, although I'm sure there's plenty of people that would debate whether or not they're great leaders. They actually work quite good. There's very few people who have ever built multi-billion dollar revenue businesses. So, I give them a pass. Jeff Bezos and even Larry Ellison. And I've kind of done okay in my career. I've worked on a lot of things, so I know how to build teams, and that's kind of what we're here for. But in this specific office hours video, I want to focus on a piece of advice that I was given that really helped me reorient the way I thought about how I was going to be successful in a new company. And the reason I share this one is most of the people that are watching these videos are getting ready to go out on their job interview. And if you're going to go out on a job interview, hopefully you land that next job. You're really excited about it. If you're going to land that next job, if it's outside of your current business, you're going to be hit with some challenges. You no longer have the personal equity that you used to have at your previous role, which means that you need to figure out how to get things done in your organization. And I often say that going to Microsoft, I did 2 tours of duty there. My first kind of straight out of college job was at Microsoft, and this was in the mid 90s when it was a super hard charging, very high ego environment. And I think that did not do me a lot of service in understanding how to work with people. I just figured it was, the only thing that mattered was being the smartest guy in the room, which it turns out that matters sometimes, but not nearly as often as I thought. And when I got to Amazon, there's a couple things. One, people in Amazon, generally, this was 2012, people in Amazon would make a joke. I heard this multiple times in my first few weeks. Oh yeah, you're coming from Microsoft? Cool, yeah. Microsoft, they do the job of 10 with 13. Here at Amazon, we do it with 7. Right, so they were kind of letting me know, like, oh, you've had it pretty cushy. You always have all the resources you need. Here, you need to be in a resource-constrained environment. But part of the Microsoft culture, and this was pre-Satya, so I get that, was just all about charge, prove you're right. And I was trying to get something done. I ran the Kindle team, and at this particular point, I was pretty early in my tenure there, and I only had responsibility for the iOS app and the Android app. And I was pulled aside by somebody above me, and they said, hey, listen, something you got to understand is being right is not the asset you think it is. Now, I didn't know how to process that. I was a little bit confused by it because, if you think about the Amazon leadership principles, they are great for delivering feedback. They are great for thinking about how you structure your work and your stories when you're interviewing, but it's also helpful in how you think about your work. And left unsaid in here, and kind of as an exercise for the reader, was to kind of figure out and decode what was really being said to me. And I was optimizing for our right a lot, because as a product manager, that's one of the core leadership principles that is required for a great product manager is our right a lot. What I failed to understand going into this new role, in an elevated role, it was a step up role for me as well, was I had no trust there. I hadn't built any trust. I hadn't earned any trust. And the fact that I had done great in previous roles didn't translate into this new company. And so despite the fact that I had just kind of run a meeting, was pounding the table about how important it was to have a synchronized experience between the iOS and the Android app, I didn't do it in the way that the company expected it. And the people who were making decisions or who would approve or deny work expected it. And so I went about the work the wrong way. I thought it mattered that I was right, and what I hadn't done is earn trust. And you earn trust by understanding the operating framework in which you are now employed, and then work to be successful in that framework. Amazon, famously, is all about data, right? Customer obsession and data. And I hadn't done the work to prove that I was right. I just assumed it was known. And the specific problem on the Kindle team was that we had a misalignment of our iOS and Android user experiences. And in just kind of owning the app and looking at the feedback that we were getting in the Play Store and the iOS App Store, it was clear that there were a lot of Android users who were complaining that, their experience on Android just was not as good or as beautiful as the iOS app. And the iOS, because there was a lot of iOS users at the kind of senior ranks, they viewed this as like the showcase of Kindle on a mobile device. And I hadn't done the work to prove that this mattered. Shame on me, right? And do it with data. And so the way that I actually went about the problem was creating a bit string, basically, to identify if a customer had logged in on a specific Surface type, Android tablet, Android phone, iOS tablet, iOS phone, e-ink device, Fire tablet, and the Cloud Reader, and understand how many different populations of users we have. That's 2 to the 7th possible populations, but it turns out it was pretty clear we had a pretty sizable populations. And what had never been asked before, which I probably should have asked that question. I just assumed everyone in the room is smart, someone had asked this question, but people's preconceived notions prevented them from asking this question, was, do we even know how many users have an Android phone and an iPad, or an iOS phone and an Android tablet? Turns out no one had ever asked that question. So now in the second meeting, after I had been given this advice that being right was not as important as I thought it was, I showed up with the right data, because I understood now, okay, the people who are making these decisions want to be shown that I am customer obsessed, fine, that I've really gotten into the mind of the customer, fine, and that I can show with data that this matters. And it turns out the cohort of users who were Android and iOS grossly underperformed in terms of revenue and time on app, those users who are iOS only. So the feedback had been coming through the Play Store, and my assumptions and gut were all correct, but now we had data to prove it. So what does this all mean for you as an individual going into an organization? You need to understand how decisions are made. You need to understand who is making decisions and how the company that you're now going into thinks about the new people who are coming in and how to integrate them. If you have a bad onboarding process and no one really kind of walks you through that, you're going to have to suss it out through example leadership from others. But charging into the room, as I did, I can be vocally self-critical in our Amazon leadership principle and say, I just went about it completely wrong, right? I charged in the room thinking it mattered the most, that I was the smartest guy in the room, and that I could say, oh, this is what we need to do, and blah, 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 blah. I was completely wrong. Happy that a senior executive pulled me aside and kind of had that quick chat with me and allowed me to take a step back and reevaluate, as opposed to, they could have just shown me the door and been like, look, you're not going to work out here. Out you go. So it's super important as you think about going through this interview process that you're going through and moving on to that next role, to think about how you approach your next job and how to be successful there. And sometimes, your previous experience, a bad thing to say in a new job is, well, at my last company, what we did, nobody wants to hear that. That's like the worst, especially if you're going from like a really big successful company into a smaller role. Nobody wants to hear that. They don't want to, it just feels so self-important. And yet I'm definitely am guilty of having done that many times early in my career. And so that's just more advice to kind of pass down from decades of work experience, but also some of the companies I've been at. It was a healthy mix of really, really high performers who then went on to startups or came back, or, startups that we bought in. And then we're like, what is going on here? I'm at Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, whatever, some of these bigger companies I've worked at through acquisition or hiring path to help you be successful. So if you do find this content useful, I would super appreciate it if you hit the like button. It tells YouTube that I'm doing a good job, and that people like you who are in the interview process, who are thinking about trying to find a new role, need this kind of content in their life. Like I said, part of the role here at Interview At is to democratize access to great information and great leaders, and just kind of pass on things that maybe you just haven't had a lens on in your career, haven't had the good fortune that some of us have had. I've been extremely lucky in my career, and I definitely believe very much in kind of reaching back and helping out whenever possible. And if there's a topic that you want to see covered here, go ahead and leave a comment, please. I continue to be surprised at I get a comment or two here or there, but I really would love to hear from people who are watching these videos. Please go ahead and leave a comment and let me know a topic that you would like to see covered.